Hi guys, Karis here, and I'm in Sedona. There are some beautiful red rocks behind me, and sorry for the bobbing of the camera, the tree has actually agreed to be my tripod. And if you hear any rustling, they're the little lizards hanging out, so I'm very much in nature right now, which is very helpful for this video, because this video is going to be about how to handle Mercury in retrograde. So, Mercury's in retrograde right now. I know it just happened. I believe it's from the beginning of June to the beginning of July, and I'm recording this on June the 7th, 2014. However, this information will be good for any time Mercury's in retrograde. And so far as Mercury being in retrograde, I am not a big wealth of knowledge on astrology. So it's not that I know exactly what's going on up there all the time, although I do have a hunch that in past times on this planet, those of us who were just generally educated, and that's a whole other thing. I am planning on talking about classic education for intuitives because I am highly educated. I have a couple master's degrees and stuff, and I have beliefs about education that might not seem to naturally go along with the education I've received. Anyway, as far as paradigms go. But I do have a very strong sense that back in the day, part of our education was learning what was going on up there. So we would at any given time know what the stars and the planets were doing because it makes a difference. It's kind of like knowing the weather. You want to know if it's raining before you leave the house and you can bring an umbrella. Well, you want to know if Mercury, for instance, is in retrograde because if it is, then you're not going to do certain things and you are going to do other things. So, although I'm not an astrologer, I do always know when Mercury is in retrograde. I can feel it. Examples of this are last spring, I believe, or maybe it was fall before last. Anyway, there was a big period of Mercury in retrograde. And I've never locked my keys in my car except for one day, and I locked them in the car twice in one day, and that was when Mercury was in retrograde. And this time, what I've personally experienced is, so before I get into it, I'll say Mercury, there's the planet Mercury, there's also the substance Mercury, which is like Quicksilver. There's also the deity, Mercury, the demigod, who is all about travel, communications. And even if you think about the way that Quicksilver or Mercury moves, it's liquid metal. It's very slippery, metallic. It's a high conductor. So anything having to do with communications, technology, travel, planning, really just things going the way that they're usually supposed to go for you, it's likely that it's not going to really work. Well, it might, but if it doesn't, I have a friend who both her cars died and both her computers blew up one time during Mercury retrograde. So the way this works is it's as if Earth is this big cauldron of stew, right? And you put in different spices. And when the planets do funny things, it's like they're stirring the cauldron in specific ways. So when Mercury's in retrograde, that just means that the normal way that these communication kind of things work are going to be kind of skewed and kind of schismed. So prepping for that is handy, although you can't always prep for it. What would be the best, for me at least, is to kind of just hide out from the world and not really try to do much with communications or technology or travel during that time. And I have been able to do that before, and it generally works very well. But you can't always do that. This is the world we live in. So, what I've also noticed this time, for instance, is that basically whatever can happen will happen. So, for me, what happened was I lost my debit card. And I knew that I shouldn't have lost it. I remembered the last time I used it and putting it back into my wallet. But the next time I went to look for it, it was gone. I searched my purse, I searched the surrounding area, couldn't find it. And so I called them up and said, could you send me another one? Just continue that one. They said, yeah, it'll be there in a few days. I said, okay, great. I have a little bit of cash to hold me over, whatever. And of course, the time pretty much doubled. So I was experiencing like a fake broke energy. I mean, I had plenty of money in my bank account for everything I needed, but I couldn't get to my bank account. So I didn't end up really undergoing very much stress, actually, physically. There was a day where I ate really light because I was just eating stuff in my fridge rather than going to the store and getting new stuff because I didn't know how long it was going to take at that point after I'd found out that they gave me a short time in the beginning for my card to get there. So that really is not that big of a deal, right? However, I was raised without having much money at all, and there were those times in the grocery line when one of my parents would swipe their card and didn't know if it was going to go through, and that kind of energy coming up did really trigger a lot of old stuff in my circuitry system. Even though I knew it was fake broke. I wasn't really broke, but it didn't matter because I couldn't get to it, so I might as well have been. So it triggered all these latent things that I didn't know I still had in my aura, since now I'm not really going through those experiences anymore because of the reality that I've manifested. So that was mine. But then the day that I finally gave into it, allowed my roommate to loan me money, and then, which I had said no, until the day, and I was like, fine. And then I carried it around for a couple days and didn't even break the bill until the day that I had to, and which was a couple days after my card should have gotten there. And then I got back and my card was there, and other stuff that I was waiting on happening had happened. So it all worked out, and it was hilarious because it waited until I released to it to clear out. And that's what I want to tell you for handling Mercury in retrograde. It feels to me a lot like contractions, and the meditation that I did this morning from the Shamanic Mysteries of Egypt book, from my monthly magic book club, was excellent. It had to do with rebirthing, and I think it's very, very much a part of this. So in this meditation, you travel to the galactic center and then through that portal onto the earth, and they gave you this whole beautiful visual of being born. And your mother in that visualization is this queen, and she's in this birthing pavilion, and around her there are people massaging her as she's in labor, and there are oils burning, and there are all these beautiful animals outside knowing that the queen is about to give birth, and people are feeding her nectar sweetened with honey and berries, and there's music playing in the room. And in my adult life, I've never had a child yet. In my adult life, I've been a fan of the very quiet, very private labor. I am contemplating doing unassisted childbirth whenever that happens, if things work out so that I can, stuff like that. But in this visualization, I saw how beautiful it was, and how there are people giving her energy work, and there were people massaging her, and all the people around her were her soul family and magicians, and they were letting her in. And then what she did, and this is what's important for the Mercury retrograde, and this was not written in the book, but I saw it, and this had to also do with an experience I had pretty recently on DMT, which I have experimented with, and once or twice, and which I'll do other information on. But when she would get a contraction to come over her, and this is all in the meditation, this is all in a visualization I'm doing, when she would have the contraction come, I would see her brow furrow a little bit from the pain, and then she would release into it and allow that expansion to come over her, and then she would tilt her head back and start laughing because of how glorious it felt to allow that expansion. And then everyone around her was also assisting by, touching her body in certain ways that would relax her and soothe her. These were all energy workers and giving her energy work and things like that, and massage. And it was so beautiful. And I remember thinking, well, logically that makes a lot of sense, because you think about that reality versus the reality of being in a labor and delivery room in a hospital, and the fear and the stark colors and shapes and, that's what I'm looking for, sterilized environment, right? So I remember floating around in the meditation, because what you eventually do is go into the child's body and be born as a child from the womb, but you're able to see what's going on before that. And I remember thinking, this could happen? This could happen. Ooh, and then now starting to weave manifestations for whenever in the future that happens. The thing this has to do with Mercury in retrograde is that I'm finding that when Mercury goes into retrograde, stuff's going to get messed up maybe. Some of us who have different charts, it may or may not get messed up as much, but it's going to happen. So when it happens, don't resist. And what I've also noticed is the more that when stuff just boils up inside of me for no reason, I'll just be in the kitchen making food and I'll start to have this itchy, weird emotion come up, and you can either tie it to some reason, which is the knee-jerk reaction to do, or you can just say, oh, it's one of those things, and just kind of release to it and expand with it and let it go through, and then you're fine. And then this stuff doesn't have to come in the physical to make you surrender, because with Mercury retrograde, stuff will come through to the physical to make you surrender, unless you can surrender to the more subtle energies. And that doesn't mean necessarily change anything about what you're doing or saying or the way that you're acting. It just means the way that you feel and not resisting and just letting it go through. Like the woman in the contraction, when she just stopped resisting and received the expansion wave coming over her, she actually started laughing. And, I'm sure people will have opinions about this because I have never had a child. But I do also know that there are things like orgasmic childbirth that do exist. So I know that's not that far outside the realm of possibility. So when Mercury is in retrograde, really just be as present as we can. Get out into nature. Try to minimize the amount of time you spend on the computer, on your cell phone, or plugged in to that pure-on Mercury matrix, because then it'll be easier. And what I'm finding is the planet naturally vibes with what the other planets and what her environment is doing. So when you attune to her, rather than to the phone I'm talking into right now, but when you attune to this stuff, then it naturally just flows, and it doesn't really matter what's going on, because you're just riding the tide of the earth, which is riding the tide easily of that stuff going on. So on that note, to give you a little jolt of Sedona nature magic, I will show you these mountains behind us. Check those out. Beautiful, huh? The red rocks. And here's this beautiful tree that was letting me come and hang out. There's a nice little interdimensional gateway right there that I was just hanging out in. You always know when you see the arch and then you see that wave of like ripple go over it, like a ripple in the water, but it's actually in the air. You know something's going on. Could be a being cloaked up, could be a gateway or a portal. Anyway, another view of the rocks to imbue you with as you go on your way. Much love, you guys. Go in peace. I have some stuff coming up. Live Your Life Purpose class is starting in a few days. I'm doing a goddess oracle card reading on the reading workshop on the summer solstice in Los Angeles. I'll put that link down below. And there's some other stuff that I will keep you posted on. Anyway, take care. Survive well this and every Mercury retrograde. And I will see you guys up there in the astrals.